It's finally here, back to race season. It's been 2 years since I've raced. The last race I did was a triathlon back in July of 2019. That year I set the new run course record, even though I was very slow because it was ridiculously hot, which then got beaten the next year because I didn't have the chance to go, or really I chose not to go because of COVID and all the things going on. I wasn't quite ready to race. I was not anywhere near being vaccinated, and it just wasn't my thing. In any case, back to racing, and I have a new strategy for what I'm doing now. I've gone back to running specifically, and I am looking at trying to hit new lifetime fastest times in the 10K. Now, specifically, I'd like to do that because my fastest 10K times have always come in the end of triathlons, and I feel like, hey, maybe I could do this before I get too old to be fast anymore. So, today, I'm going to go over the race plan. It is July 1st. The race is on July 4th. It is a 4-mile run. So we're going to talk about my race strategy, and then after the race is over, I will come back. We'll talk about what happened, what I can take from it, and then how you can use that to apply it to your own situation. So I want to do this today, before the race, so it is a candid approach, and then we can see, did the race go to plan? Did it go to shit? We'll see what happens, but let's look at the race map. So here is the race map. I'm looking at it here on my laptop. This is the 4 and the 4th of Ward Parkway. Ward Parkway is this kind of pretty street here in Kansas City. Lots of trees, lots of cover, which is nice for this time of year. It starts in this mall parking lot, goes around on Ward Parkway and comes back and finishes at the mall parking lot. Now, the map we're looking at doesn't tell us a whole lot. So, I have actually gone over to Map My Run, and I've mapped it all out, because this is going to help tell me a little bit more about what I should be doing at this race. Now, my goal, given that I've just been doing base miles pretty much, if you've watched any of my other videos, you know I had a stress fracture earlier in the year, which was a weird situation from just wearing too soft of shoes. We've been really conservative with my mileage and building mileage, so it was not related to that as far as we can tell. But I had to restart, so I pretty much just been doing base miles. I haven't really got any speed work in yet. So my goal for this 4-mile race is to be sub 24 minutes, so under 6-minute mile pace. My 10K PR is roughly 5:30-minute mile pace, so I feel like if I can do this in only base miles without having done any speed in over a year now, I'm probably in pretty good shape. So looking at this course map here on Map My Run, we know that the first mile is pretty much downhill to flat. So if I want to hit that, I know that I actually need to go slightly faster than that on the first mile. Because it's downhill, I need to take advantage of that. This is where running with RPE comes into mind, rate of perceived exertion. So when I actually go do the race, I'll be wearing a watch to take splits just so I can report them to you, but I actually won't be looking at the watch. I don't typically race with a watch. It's entirely by feel. And knowing that I'm in the right feel will lead me to that faster time. So let's take a guess on this first mile and say 5:50 is what I'd like to run. Now, on the second mile, we're flat to uphill, and that means I'm going to lose the time that I gained in the first one. So I'm going to probably slow down by about 20 seconds per mile. Let's call this second mile 6:10. The third mile is rolling, so I need to hit about 6 minutes there. And then the last mile is downhill to an uphill finish, which means once I hit that 3-mile marker, I know that I've got to start putting on the gas, really take advantage of that last downhill before the uphill comes. Because when the uphill comes, it's all heart, it's all guts, get to the finish line. So we can look at this elevation map and we see that uphill is 1/4 mile. So you've got roughly 1.5 minutes on the uphill to finish. You should be able to gut out 1.5 minutes, or at least I should. So I'm not too worried about that. So third mile, 6 minutes, and then the fourth mile, if I want to break that 24-minute thing, I've got to go at least 5:50. So that's the race plan. That's what we're going to see hopefully happens. I'll report back to you, and then hopefully I can tell you everything went well, what actually happened, and then we'll see, how that applies to you and how you can use your race results to set up your training for the future. Okay, I'm back. So it's only been a few seconds for you, but it's been an entire week for me since I shot that first video that before the 4th of July run. Got my bib number. We are post-race now, and I want to go over what happened with the splits and kind of how the race went. So I'm actually going to look at, I'll pull this up on the screen. I'm going to look at this on my phone so I can react in real time, sync that up a little bit better. So this was the start. It was this nice like downhill start. So here we are coming down. I'm going to be in a white shirt. It's got orange on it, just much like the Solpre shirt here. But so see, I'm right there on the right, and we're coming around the bend. I started off in the front, just knowing that looking at previous year's results, I was going to be somewhere near like top 5 with that 24-minute run was my guess. So I went ahead and put myself in the front of the pack and started out. Surprisingly, the race started out a little slow. It's a downhill start, so we came down the hill from the chute and then went out sharp downhill to start, and then the first mile, as I mentioned, is downhill. So I was surprised how slow the race started out, especially because it's free speed, but I knew bombing down the hill wasn't going to help me since I was going to, getting eaten up. Where I ended up with these splits was actually pretty good overall. It was actually a really consistent pacing. Now, I took the splits, but I didn't look at my watch throughout the whole race because I wanted to race it as I normally would, which is without wearing a watch. I simply wore a watch so I could take the splits so I could relay them to you. Now, remember, I said in the beginning, or really it was last week, that my intention was to go 550, 610, 6, and 550 to try to get under that 24-minute goal. Now, I haven't raced in 2 years, so this is simply a guess, a somewhat educated guess. I learned after the fact that my coach expected me to finish a fair bit after 6-minute pace, so I was being a little, I guess, optimistic. But here's the video as I'm coming into the finish. Didn't have anybody else to run with me, just trying to coming in. But as I came up the hill, I saw that 24 minutes and ended up finishing 24:08. My mile splits 5:57, 6:09, 6:06, and 5:55. So I did follow the basic trend that I was intending to do, but made a few small mental mistakes in the very first mile. When you saw me going out in that run, I was with basically the 4 leaders to start with, and I knew that they were probably going to finish a couple of minutes ahead of me, which they did. However, I let them go because of that, thinking, oh, maybe I'm going too fast, even though I felt fine. And that was a small mental mistake in not trusting myself in my pacing, because they basically came through the first mile right where I wanted to and had taken out their first mile slow. So I made a little bit of a mistake there and lost a couple seconds there. That extra 7 seconds would have helped. And then on mile 3, I made another mental mistake in that I didn't charge the hills quite hard enough. If I'd given a little bit extra on the hills, or even a little more on the downhills, then I probably could have made up that 6 seconds and been under my 24-minute goal. But altogether, I would say not a bad day. I came away with this nice glass here, first for the old guys. A couple of those leaders were actually a couple 46-year-old guys, so kudos to them. Other than that, it was all the like 19 to 23-ish athletes that beat me, but I'll be coming after them here soon. So where we go from here is the really big point that I want to get to in this video. Not just what I did, but what do we look for? How do you take something like this and move it forward? So what you want to do from a race like this is know, number one, where are you? So in my case, I'm just in base building, which means we've just been doing a lot of long, slow miles. I've been getting a little bit of faster work on the bike, but not really that much on the run. We did do a couple tempo pieces leading up to this race, meaning like 2 5-minute sections of tempo pace, which is about all I can handle, and that's what I raced at, around that 6-minute mark. So that's where I had the guess of I could probably hold this for about 4 miles. And after the race finished, I thought, I actually may be able to complete a whole 10K at that pace. But I'm simply not in the shape to go much faster. Now, that is a very, very good thing, because my intention is to try to go around 5:30 pace for the 10K. And if I haven't put any speed work in yet, and I'm already sitting at 6:02 pace from this particular race, but 6-ish, then I'm not in bad shape. It takes me back to, if I think about my senior year of college, we did a 5K in time trial to start the year off after base building in the summer to gauge fitness. And I ran somewhere around like mid to high 17s for that 5K, so it was like 5:45, 5:50 pace after base building. And then that year I ended up having my fastest 8K ever, which is a 5-miler, at 5:18 pace. It was like 26:30. So if you think about that kind of progression, I know that that was actually within a few months, but in my case it's going to take a little longer as I'm older and I haven't done any speed work in quite some time. It's about 30 seconds of improvement over a year. So you can kind of look and say, hey, I'm in this space. In my case, I've been running for 20 years, so I don't have as much room for improvement. But you can say, here I am, I'm base, I can do about tempo, and then you can match that up with the tables from the Jack Daniels running tables that I've referenced a number of times. So let me pull that up. We'll come back to the video here in a second, and then we're going to look at that. Okay, so here is the tricky thing we want to do with the Jack Daniels running table, and this is to try for me to project where I think I can be, what's realistic. And again, I think based on my own intuition, where I know I've been, it makes it a little easier for me because I have a 20-year history of competitive running. But for you, this is kind of a cheaty way to figure out what's a theoretical maximum. Is it perfect? Absolutely not. You may be able to get farther, you may not be able to get there. But this is a good kind of ballpark. So we'll look at the Jack Daniels tables, and normally what you do, and for your training this is what you're going to do, is take your time and then match it up with the training tables and say, okay, that is where I need to be training to get faster. So what you would do there is say, like this race, 6-minute pace is like an 18:30, 18:36 5K or something like that. So I'd find that on the tables. I go under 5K, 1840 is like a 54 VDOT. So I come down 54, and that's got all my training paces right there. But what I want to do here is actually think about, if I think that 6 minutes is tempo pace for me, assuming that I can increase my fitness, what's an actual realistic race pace? And this is where the experience comes with me to know that that race was tempo, meaning like a middle of the pack kind of pace for me. So not long run, not race pace, it's like right in the middle. We would also refer to it as zone 3. There's zone 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. You can race at like the high end of zone 4 for 5K and sometimes 10K. So what we would do is find the 6 minutes on the intervals, which is going to be around 62, 63. And that's like thresholdy, easy long run, up long pace, this third table here. So 62, 63, so we come back to the other table, 62, 63, which would put me, mid 34s, or mid 16s for the 5K, mid 34s for the 10K, which is actually my target goal. And truthfully, I didn't look at this table beforehand. This is all based on my history, but it does seem like this method should work relatively well to say this is about the rate of increase you can get. That isn't to say you can't get faster, because I do have faster times than that. My fastest times ever for the 5K is 15:52, which means theoretically my fastest 10K should be somewhere around the 33-minute mark. But I simply don't know whether I can get into that kind of shape again. That was almost a decade ago at this point. So we're going to give it a heck of a go. But that's one way to try to project forward and say, what do I think I can possibly do based on I'm in base building, I just did a race as a benchmark, and now I'm trying to improve. Don't use it as the gospel truth, but know that you've got a pretty big margin to get better if you're doing that. So, what have you done on your race? How are you improving? What's your biggest margin of improvement? Share it in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you, and I'm sure other people would as well. I'll see you next time on the next episode of Runner's High.